is about people and their lives. And you are saying, God has anointed me to walk up in here and reclaim a life.
Yes.
That's what he's talking about. He said, look, these folks are starving and they're hungry and they're struggling, and the only thing you can tell them is, I hope it goes well. No. The very acting is that you have to put yours on the line and begin to say, God, you got to cover me.
Yeah.
And God, you got to give me strength and guidance to walk in these situations.
Yeah.
Listen to the text. But someone will say, you have faith and I have works. Show me your faith apart from your works, and I by my works. Let me show you how I live.
Yeah.
This ain't just because I put a collar on.
Right.
This is about how I live every day. Whether you see me or whether you don't. This is how I live and this is how I respond. Some of the folks that I used to work with at Grady, some of my coworkers would tell me, you are the biggest sap going. As if folk come up to you and ask you, you all over here buying these folks, they ain't doing nothing but trying to use you. I said, that's okay.
Right.
Because I remember a time in my life when I used to mess over folks and mess over stuff and mess over things. And God covered me in the midst. And one day God awoke my mind and God brought my consciousness. And all of a sudden, see, I used to do the same thing. Go hit folks up to get money and go do certain things to use certain folks. I have been there and done that. But the same God that redeemed me can be the same God that can redeem them. So I don't look at myself. I look at what God has done. And therefore, I'm just an instrument that God is trying to use to catch somebody. See, some of us, if we stop trying to be so cute and try to be so, and really start remembering what we have done in our lives, and then begin to extend that kind of love and compassion to somebody, we might be able to help people embrace a new perception of themselves and God. He says, look, you have faith and I have works.
Yeah.
Show me your faith apart from your works.
Yes.
And I'll show you, because he said, look, if you have faith, you'll remember what God has done in your life. And that compels you to go out.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember when I used to cuss folks out. I remember I'd knock you out. And you tell I'm a big fella. I'd fight in a heartbeat. I'd go up there and drink and do all the stuff you know the folks do that we Christians say we don't do. We put nice little monikers on it. Oh, you know, that was BC. That must have been yesterday then, because we act like we've never been there. But he said, look, because I remember what God has done. When I look at this individual, I see the possibilities. I begin to see the potentiality. I begin to see what God can do in their lives. How do I see it? Because I'm looking in a mirror.
Come on.
I'm looking at where I've been. I'm looking at what I've done. So I've seen this transformation. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Verse 19, you believe that God is one, you do well. Even the demons believe and shudder. Just because you say you believe there's a God don't mean nothing. There are folks out there in the street whose lives are falling all apart, but there are also people who party harder than you do and say, oh, I believe there's God.
Right.
Well, I used to be in the club. I was a preacher's kid. I was a preacher's grandkid. I was a preacher's great-grandkid. I can sit up in there with a Jack and Coke and quote you scripture and tell you what the context of the scripture was. I can sit there and tell you don't know what that said. They say this right here. And I can say, yeah, there is a God. But see, that God don't mean anything unless that God is driving your life, that God is moving you, that don't mean anything unless I can come to you and show you the compassion and the love that God has put me. That does not mean anything because you go to church and you got your title on. That don't mean anything because you live in a kingdom. That don't mean anything. It's what God is bringing out of you. Now, a lot of our churches have lost that. We think because we got a big building and we got a big staff and because we're on television and folks know our name that we have done something. You haven't done anything. Because there's a crack house right across the street. There's some kids failing right next door. There's some family families that's falling apart. What are you doing to show them that God cares about them? That's when your faith was when you do it.
Come on.
Let me say it this way. Do you want to be shown, you senseless person, that faith apart from works? It's interesting what Paul does. What the writer James does here. Look at the word that he uses. In my NRSV, I don't know what King James does. I forgot to put that in my notes. But there's a word here that says barren. To be barren means you can't produce.